Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
I've heard it said before, like, it was a very smart man named Robert Meyer Burnett who said the currency of our current age is authenticity. And it's so true.
Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited, in association with MAC Productions, presents True Noir from the Nathan Heller Casebooks, Season 1, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, based on Max Allan Collins' writer of Road to Perdition's 19-novel series about a one-time Chicago PD officer turned private eye to the stars. Look for the crowdfunding campaign coming to you this June, already in production. 10 episodes, almost 400 script pages. A cast of characters and actors you won't believe. I can't wait to bring this to you. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the maybe never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right. I've lost my lower third. Me. That's right. Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm, of course, Robcasting you. You members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. You imagination connoisseurs. You people who are on this journey with me to boldly go wherever we end up. As long as we're having a good time. And we have fine food, fine wine, and fine whatever else you're looking for. Because that's what I'm looking for. Now, first of all, I haven't been in here in a while. It's been a busy week with both White Devils and, of course, the audio drama True Noir. It's called True Noir Season 1. True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak from the Nathan Heller Casebooks. And I have to tell you, Christine Sheeks, my casting director, has done an extraordinarily phenomenal job casting this. I can't wait to announce who the cast is. We record one of them this Sunday, believe it or not. They're in a foreign country, and we're going to be recording them from that foreign country in our recording studio at Private Island Audio. It's going to be very exciting. I can't wait to share more of this project with you as it unfolds. I can only tell you that the scripts are amazing. Now, I want to start first by talking about the Upper Deck Company. That's right, the trading card company, Upper Deck. Now, I was contacted by them, I want to say like a year ago, and they asked if I would help them promote their new series of Marvel prints. Now, they don't give me any money. They send me the prints, and they say I can do whatever I want with them. Now, I have to say, when I first started out doing this, I'm like, okay, see what it was. But as you know, the first one they sent me was a Moon Knight print, and it was dope. I loved it. It's really great. And they come in like trading card, the like plastic trading card holders or like to keep them protected. And they come in larger versions of that. And then they sent me an X-Men print, which I thought was cool. And then I got contacted by them recently, and they said, Rob, would you be interested in a She-Hulk print? Now, I liked She-Hulk. I liked the Byrne run of She-Hulk. I liked She-Hulk when she was a member of the Fantastic Four. But I'm like, okay, fine, send it to me. Maybe if I didn't like it. So then I get it, and I open it up. And like all the other Upper Deck prints that they've sent me, I was like, okay. And I have it right here, as you might have thought I would. Here it is. The sensational... I mean, look at this print. This is so dope. Like, oh, I mean, like, there's lights on it. There's... So it's She-Hulk as like Atlas. I mean, this art is phenomenal. And this... I'm sorry, it's reflecting. But this is by Tammy Mandel. And it's, of course, an edition size of 250. I love this. And because they come in these protectors, these really heavy protector sleeves, and by the way, there's a certificate of authenticity in the back. This is dope. Like, I love this print. It's so cool. And again, only 250, and they're, very reasonably priced. And I think as a She-Hulk print, like, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I love this reference. I think this thing is dope, and I love this. I mean, I want to get an actual frame for it. Elizabeth's daughter Sophie saw this, and she was like, oh, "Can I have that?" And I was like, "I mean, maybe," but this is really amazing. So I want to thank the Upper Deck Company for thinking of me. I mean, I don't know why. I will not look a gift horse in the mouth. I've been extraordinarily impressed with these prints. I've liked all the artwork. I've loved the quality of what you've sent. And by the way, they pack them very, very well, so nothing will happen to these things. I mean, I just love this art. I love this art. Anyway, I want to thank the Upper Deck Company for sending it to me. And it's funny because whenever they ask, you say yeah because you want to be, but they've always exceeded my expectations. And I'm like, thank you, Upper Deck. You guys know what's up. You understand when you license out Marvel characters. I mean, go back and look at that Moon Knight print. That Moon Knight print was amazing. I love this She-Hulk print. And they're limited edition. They only make 250 of them. So, probably a good investment. So that's pretty cool. Now, okay. As everyone knows, or if you follow me on social media, the great Martino Simoni came. He was here for my birthday. He came and visited. He flew into Las Vegas, rented a Shelby Mustang, and drove all the way up to Montana, and then back down and came to visit me. But before he stopped by my house, I wasn't here, and he laughed. He laughingly left me a tip. This is the first live tip that I ever received. Now, I mistakenly called this Swedish currency. It's Swiss kroner, but I mistakenly called it Swiss currency, which I thought, okay, I made a mistake. I'm old enough to admit that I made a mistake. Well, anyway, then I got this in the mail. This came in the mail. I looked at it. I'm like, where is this? It's clearly from a foreign land. Allow me to read. Hey, Rob. Martino Simoni left you a tip with some Swiss money the other day. At first, you mistook it for Swedish money. For educational purposes, so that you don't confuse Swedish and Swiss banknotes, I'm sending you some images of these Swedish banknote bills as well as two bills that you might find interesting being a movie connoisseur. Unlike many other countries, Swedish money has the image of cultural icons of the 20th century on them. The 20 SEK bill has Astrid Lindgren, the children's book author, most known for Pippi Longstocking, and the 50 SEK bill has the image of Everett Taub the troubadour, who has written many beloved musical pieces. The 100 SEK bill has the image of Greta Garbo, the actress known for her work in silent movies and speaking roles during the 1920s and 1940s. The 200 SEK bill has the image of Ingmar Bergman, the movie director. I'm sure you're well aware of his work. Yes, indeed. I have the Bergman Criterion box set right over there. The 500 SEK bill has the image of Brigitte Nielsen, the famous opera singer. And the 1,000 SEK bill has the image of Dag Hammarskjöld, I can't even pronounce his last name, who was the UN Secretary General between 1953 and 1961. He died in a plane crash on his way to negotiating the conflict in the Congo. There are some unanswered questions as to whether there was foul play involved. kind of like the president of Iran. The backside of the bills show the landmarks that's associated with the featured cultural icon. Rob, I know that you guys are probably forever tied to your Benjamin Franklins and the other guys on your money, but if you had to list 5 or 6 American cultural icons of the 20th century to have on your money, who would it be? I think Frank Sinatra and maybe Aretha Franklin would be 2 icons to have on your money. What other movie stars, authors, film directors, or other American cultural icons could you see on your money? Thanks, Stubble McShave. P.S. I sent you 2 movie-related Swedish banknote bills. Do with them what you will. So first of all, Stubble went out of his way and made this for me that had pictures of everybody he talked about, which was very nice of him. And also, this was, after all, for my birthday. And here you have Greta Garbo, I Want to Be Alone. And here's the flip side. And, of course, here is, here we go. And the flip side. So now, I mean, okay. So here you have Swedish money, okay? And here we have Swiss money. Okay, this may be, the colors are maybe brighter over here, but yeah, they don't look that much alike. But I feel bad that I made this mistake, but I like that Stubble McShave sent me these to do with as I will. I've got this cup right here. It's my prisoner cup I got from my Kickstarter campaign the first time, the Village Foods, and I haven't really drank out of it because this isn't a big enough coffee cup for me, but I'm just going to keep filling it with foreign currency, and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to have, because I maybe I could take this to the bank and have this currency converted and maybe use it. Also, Stubble also sent me more Jim Butcher Dresden Chronicles books, so thank you for that, Stubble. That was very nice of you, and this is very nice of you as well, so thank you for that. And not to if you want to send me foreign currency, maybe I'll start a show, the Foreign Currency Show with Rob, and please, I'll keep filling this cup from the Village the Village Foods cup with foreign currency, so thank you for that. I also got a card from our own moderator. You know him, you love him, Mr. Tom Jackson Jr., Tom Jr. Jackson, which I have not opened. Let's open it up together, shall we? On your birthday, imagine you're on an all-expenses-paid vacation to a tropical paradise. I will. Now imagine it's your birthday present from me, because I know you have a good imagination. Enjoy your day, Rob. Hope you have a great birthday, and the card gives you a good laugh. Enjoy the next trip around the sun. Happy birthday, Tom. Tom, thank you for this. This is a good birthday card. Thank you very much. I'm still celebrating my birthday, so if you want to wish me a happy birthday or send me some more Swedish money, I'm here for that. Anyway, that's all the news. I've been around for a while, so hey, I wanted to get past that and thank everybody for thinking of me and making the effort. That was very nice. Now, of course, the other thing that everybody's been asking me about. What do you think that is? All the Star Trek news that dropped this week. What do I think about it? Now, first of all, Todd Stashwick, as you know, who is starring as Nathan Heller in our audio drama, he asked a question, and from my 900th episode, he's talked a lot about, like, if we work in professional circles with people that work on Star Trek, how can you be critical? And Todd said if he's going to work on my project with me, how can I be critical of his Star Trek family? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask. But here's the thing. Like, I'm not the actors. They have no say in their lines of dialogue. And I think that the problem that I've had with modern Star Trek is the people at the top that are making it. And I would say I think that there is here's what I find interesting, and rather than just do a Star Trek rant, which I could do, but I don't. I think I really have said everything I need to say about Star Trek, modern Star Trek especially. Y'all know what I'm going to say. But in the case of what's happening with Star Trek, I find it fascinating from a corporate IP management standpoint. So there are few ongoing entertainment franchises. Obviously, Doctor Who is one, James Bond is one, Planet of the Apes is one. I mean, if you think about it, Doctor Who, Planet of the Apes, James Bond, Star Trek, all of these franchises. We got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in theaters now, which is quite good. I've really, again, I've seen it twice, and I really enjoy it. And do I think it's perfect? And do I think it's the best of these modern films? No, but it's very respectable. And now we have Mr. Gatwa as the new Doctor Who, and you know, I think that's a mixed bag, but still something created in the 1960s. Star Trek is also from the 1960s, and the James Bond film franchise started in 62. So we have these long-time IPs that I've loved my whole life, and I've been watching literally since I was born. And I'm very attached to a lot of them. Not so much Doctor Who. I kind of came to that later in the Tom Baker years, as a lot of Americans did, because we just couldn't see Doctor Who over here, unless you got videotapes or whatever. But certainly Bond, Apes, Star Trek, I discovered them all around the time I was 5 years old, and I kind of went from there. But what's been interesting, like the way that these franchises, I think Planet of the Apes has been Rise, Dawn, War, and now Kingdom, very successful. And I don't just mean financially. I mean in terms of creatively. Like obviously, like a lot of us, I didn't enjoy the Tim Burton reboot as much. I love the 5 original Apes films as a kid. I think Planet of the Apes, the first one, is a great movie in its own right. And the sequels, I think, are a lot of fun. They're all quite different and very interesting. And even though they have diminishing budgets and all that, they were fascinating, and I liked them all for various reasons as a kid. And they were a part of my childhood. You could see them in the theater, watch all 5 of them, go ape. 20th Century Fox did a great job of selling those year after year after year. So I love those. Love James Bond. And of course, Star Trek is my jam. You know, but we've watched, in a way, Star Trek to me is like the James Bond franchise. Really like Casino Royale. And I'm a Quantum of Solace apologist. I mean, I know some people don't dig it, but it's kind of a coda to Casino Royale. But Skyfall, I know it made $1 billion and everyone loves it. It's a weird riff on Dark Knight. Spectre, I couldn't stand, and I really hated No Time to Die, and I wanted to love No Time to Die. But I feel that like they were trying to take James Bond, like Star Trek, is trying to take what it is and turn it into something that it isn't. In this, I think, mistaken belief that they're trying to update it for modern audiences. Now, I think what's very interesting is I don't believe that IPs last forever. The character of James Bond doesn't really fit anymore in our world today. The idea of certain political borders, I mean, the good guys and the bad guys, the Cold War and all that, it was very easy to define the character of Bond in that 60s and even 70s and 80s sensibilities. But now the world has changed. You know, there's an idea that at all costs we would preserve Western civilization against, whether it was Hugo Drax, who wanted to eliminate all of humanity and rebuild again with his perfect people. Same with Carl Stromberg. So you had Moonraker and Spy Love Me and then Moonraker. Or you had Smersh, Spectre, you know, all these different things. But it was really the British, the Americans, our way of life against the alternative. Now, however, when people that are even living with Western civilization after the Age of Enlightenment don't like their own civilization, what's James Bond supposed to protect? I mean, most of us do, but a lot of us don't. Especially when you have part of the Western world acknowledging a terrorist organization for being terrorists and saying, here, people seem to forget what war is and all that. Things are not as defined as they used to be. So is the character of James Bond relevant again? And they tried to make him, let's get in touch with his feelings, let's make him more human. And in doing so, I think the entertainment value of the character is diminished. I have to say, as somebody who'd been enjoying James Bond movies since I was a kid, after No Time to Die, I'll watch a James Bond movie, but I don't really have any desire to see another one. I've seen enough James Bond movies, and let's face it, that franchise is, its results have been mixed. But I look, even a bad James Bond movie, like I'll tell you what, I define bad James Bond movies as View to a Kill, Man with a Golden Gun, Diamonds Are Forever. They're not the greatest movies in the world, but, by the way, I'm going to get back to Stubble's question about who would I have on Currency. One of the people I would have on Currency is Frederick Douglass, by the way, right here. I know he's not 20th century. He's 19th century, but he was one hell of a speech maker. And I'm a big fan of Frederick Douglass. I would definitely put him on some Currency. But anyway, so when it comes to Star Trek, what I found fascinating about Star Trek, unlike, say, Star Wars, since 2009, there has been a concerted effort to take Star Trek. They're thinking of it like a corporation would. Okay, we have this IP. Now, a corporation, when they have an IP, they don't think about, like, if you were to go to any corporate boardroom and pull out your Star Trek encyclopedia that the Okudas put together, which I have right over there, my slipcase, that you'd be laughed out of the corporate boardroom. When you start actually talking about the in-universe minutia about the Star Trek universe, you lose first of all, you lose credibility with your overlords, your corporate overlords, the people that run Paramount. All they know is this IP has been entertaining people since 1966. And when J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot took over the franchise and gave us the 2009 reboot, the first thing they did was, rather than look at the franchise, they decided, and carried forward, they decided to go back and reinvent the core tenets of that franchise. Go back to original Star Trek and give us Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. They gave us this convoluted Kelvin universe, so it didn't conflict with canon. But what they did was they went back and decided to change. Like, we already saw the adventures of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And what was interesting about it, what made Star Trek an interesting franchise, is you have the 3 seasons of Star Trek that ran from 66 to 69. A decade later, you get Star Trek The Motion Picture. And immediately what that did was within in-universe. Look, as a Star Trek fan in the 70s, the Star Trek universe was probably the most, other than Tolkien's works, the Star Trek universe was probably the most examined and thought about by its fan base of any franchise in history, aside from maybe Tolkien. But I would dare say maybe even more than Tolkien. But Tolkien's work, Star Trek, similar, but what people loved about it was the universe. I mean, as somebody who grew up reading the Best of Trek anthologies with all the essays examining the Star Trek universe and the novels that were being published and everything, whether it was Marshak and Colbraith's Strange New World short stories, or whether it was David Gerrold's The Galactic Whirlpool, or James Blish's Spock Must Die, or books like Spock Messiah, all that, the Star Trek Technical Manual, the Star Trek Blueprints. All you had was 3 seasons of a Star Trek show, and then you had 2 seasons of an animated series, and that was it. That's all we had of Star Trek. But the universe was so fascinating, and the fan base was so passionate, that in the 70s, when the show went into strip syndication, it became more popular than ever. We got our Star Trek photo novels, we got Power Records, we got all kinds of things. And then 10 years later, we got Star Trek The Motion Picture. Now, as I've talked about many times before, because Star Trek had a pilot, The Cage, that was not used. It was rejected by the network and repurposed into the first season of Star Trek as the first and only 2-part episode of the original series, The Menagerie Parts 1 and 2. The journey that you go on with 1966 Star Trek to Star Trek the Motion Picture, where there's a huge continuity, and then added upon by Star Trek's 2, The Wrath of Khan, 3, Search for Spock, 40th anniversary this year. Matt Ferguson over at Vice Press did a banger of a poster of Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4, Star Trek 5, Star Trek 6. The Star Trek universe had a continuity that you watched grow and change. And then with the advent of Star Trek the Motion Picture, you had 11 years of Enterprise history and then 15 years of Enterprise history. You had 11 years accounted for between the Cage and the original series, and then 15 years after the original series was when Star Trek 2 took place. People have speculated it's not really canonical, but people assume that after Star Trek the Motion Picture, the Enterprise went on another 5-year mission. So you have all that time. So Star Trek had an in-universe continuity that it was always building upon. And from 1966 to 2005, there is a Star Trek continuity that spans hundreds of years. Now, here's the thing. It was fun as a fan to follow. Some of this continuity gets a little convoluted. The human, the Klingon and the augment virus and all that, and the ridged Klingons. I mean, there's been a weird, they had to explain away all this stuff. Okay, but there's still a continuity. Sometimes it's a little loosey-goosey, but that was part of what made the show fun, was this continuity. You could follow it. You could see how uniforms changed, technology changed, warp nacelles changed. And the reason that people love this franchise, especially the passionate fan base, was they felt that this was in our imaginations, it was a real thing. It was a real thriving, growing place. 1966 to 2005, when I call it the Roddenberry DNA era of Star Trek ended. So Star Trek goes off the air. And by the way, if Star Trek Enterprise had the ratings it had then, now it never would have gone off the air. It would have run 7 seasons, but whatever. So the thing about Star Trek, as a lifelong fan, now I'm called by modern fans old man shouting at clouds, but part of what was so fun about Star Trek was this extended continuity of this fictional universe. Well, what modern Star Trek has done, and I start the modern age of Star Trek in 2009, was the people that took over the Star Trek franchise wanted to reinvent it in their image, which really was fundamentally what Star Trek did not do from 1966 to 2005. They tried Star Trek again. Yeah, Enterprise. Enterprise was the first time that in the Berman era that Brandon Braga and Rick Berman, who created Enterprise, had to deal with network interference. It was their idea to spend the first season of Enterprise on Earth and dealing with the lead up to the launch of the Earth's first warp 5 spaceship, which was the NX-01 Enterprise. But the network wouldn't allow it. It was the first time that Star Trek, modern Star Trek since 87, they never had network interference, but they were dealing with the network making Enterprise. And what the fuck did network people know about Star Trek anyway? They were trying to tell people that had worked on Star Trek from 1987 to 2001 how to make their Star Trek show. And again, this is where you saw them, seriously, what the fuck did they know about making Star Trek? Not a whole heck of a lot. So in 2009, they decide to go back and just start at the beginning and reinvent Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, which in my mind, I don't understand from a creative standpoint. The thing that was always interesting about modern Star Trek was Star Trek The Next Generation. You have a whole new crew. Deep Space Nine, a new premise. Instead of boldly going, you're staying in one place. It's no longer Wagon Train to the Stars. It's Bonanza. You're now on the Ponderosa, which I thought was really, really interesting. And anybody who's watched Deep Space Nine knows where it goes. And it's an incredibly gratifying experience to watch Deep Space Nine spin up after seasons 1 and 2 and then move forward. By the time you get seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Deep Space Nine are insanely good. So it was amazing. Voyager they wanted to return to more of a ship-based thing. It was kind of a copy of a copy, but there's a lot of Voyager's a very schizophrenic show, but I've gone back and watched it, and there's a lot to like there. I really like the cast. And then you get to Enterprise, another show that's ripe for reassessment. And by the time you get to the Manny Cotto run, season 4, it's pretty amazing. But rather than carry the Star Trek universe forward, in 2009, Star Trek began to, one, stagnate. And the 3 Kelvinverse movies are, I have to say, I like the cast, but they're just not very good movies. They're really badly written science fiction. It's not good Star Trek because it's not really Star Trek. They're trying to, let's reinvent it and make it fun and action-packed. And what they tried to do was turn Star Trek into every other IP rather than lean into the Star Trek of it all. And Star Trek changes with the times. They went back and they're trying to retell the story of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. But what was interesting about that was we watched the characters of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy start as young men and grow to the point where Kirk died, Spock died, Scotty was in the Janolan and crashed on a Dyson sphere. But we know what happened to these characters over the course of decades. So to go back and watch Kirk, Spock, and McCoy being played by other people, it's like, it was kind of weird. I don't think it would have been weird if it was only 3 seasons of a TV show from the 60s. But when you had movies, Star Trek the motion picture was 79. Star Trek 6 was 91. Generations was 94. So we've watched these characters grow for, from 66, almost 30 years of watching Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. So when you go back and you present us, I know things are reinvented for a new generation, but when you go back and you watch these movies, it's like it never felt authentic. And then they decided to go back and retell in one of the most badly conceived. Star Trek Into Darkness, as I've said, is one of the worst big budget science fiction films I think ever made. And it has a fundamental, complete misunderstanding and misreading of Khan, Nooney, and Singh. I wonder, as a film editor myself, who's been in edit bays for months on end working on films, I don't even understand how much of Star Trek Into Darkness was even put together. Like, did they not ask themselves weird questions like, why is Peter Weller, why does he have a model of his super secret Federation dreadnought on the desk in his office? There's and do they know who Khan actually is and what he did? That he's Sikh, he's Indian, and it's really bizarre. And so starting in 2009, then we get our next TV series, which is Star Trek Discovery, which is a prequel, to Star Trek, and none of what's in Discovery fits. The technology doesn't fit, the characters don't fit, the look of it doesn't fit. And yet they're trying to tell us, oh, no, this is just a visual reboot. Like, is it? Because when you're watching Star Trek and you're watching the era from 66 to 2005, we have an episode, Trials and Tribulations, that was done for the 30th anniversary of Star Trek, where we have characters from 100 years in the future go back in time to an original Star Trek episode, and it looks the same. They didn't have to do a visual reboot. They were already doing visual reboots and carrying the technology and the premise forward. And yet, the people that are making Star Trek now, and I know this is not to take away from the people that like Star Trek, but what they could have done, and what I fail to understand why this wasn't done. Why didn't they continue the evolution of the same universe? When you go back and you're telling your audience, your core audience, that yes, this is a visual reboot, this is supposed to be in continuity, when we're all scratching our heads going, but it's not in continuity. The people who are making this show, have made not one iota of effort to try and work your Star Trek into what's existed since 1966. And I understand from a corporate standpoint, yes, we have to reinvent it for a new generation. But the thing is, Star Trek was already reinvented for new generations to the point where you called the show that. And it worked. Star Trek The Next Generation debuted 21 years after the first debut of the original series, and people liked it. It was of its time, and yet it was still in continuity, and it kept that Star Trek universe moving forward. And it's bizarre that we are seeing things, not only things that are supposed to be prequels of Star Trek, but now they jump into 1,000 years into the future when everything feels kind of the same. It's the most unimaginative human future probably ever committed to celluloid or digitally captured, because everything just seems the same. There's been no effort other than weird technological advances that don't really seem plausible. And the depiction of spaceships, the interior of the Enterprise early on, or the depiction of the Discovery early on, like, where's all this empty space? Do you guys know what a spaceship would be like? It's not Star Wars, it's Star Trek. But as you know, I'm no fan of modern Star Trek. To me, it doesn't make sense. When I look at it, it's like somebody's lying to my face. That's how I feel watching modern Star Trek. It's like you're lying to my face. Why are the cabins in these starships so big? Why is this literally the actual space inside these ships? Why is it so expansive? It's not believable. I know most people don't care about that, but the Star Trek universe already has shown us. But beyond that, I'm not here to slag off on modern Star Trek. I don't mean to, as I've said, if you like Star Trek, that's great. I look at modern Star Trek as somebody's lying to my face. And not only that, they haven't done the work. They haven't even bothered. It seems to me, it's like a kid in school, and I know because I used to be this kid, who would give you the answer to a math problem, and they don't show their work. That's what I feel watching modern Star Trek is like that. It's like cheating on a math test, and you only have the answers, but you don't understand the math. And what good is that for you? That's what modern Star Trek is to me. Which brings us to now. So on one hand, I've done a show about how I think all modern genre writers are completely influenced by Joss Whedon, by Angel, Buffy, maybe a little Firefly, a little Dollhouse, whatever, but mostly Buffy and Angel. Everybody writing these shows is inspired by them, and all they've done is they've taken those interpersonal relationships and put those at the forefront. The action, adventure, science fiction, allegory, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to write allegorical science fiction because they've never read science fiction, and all they know is movies they've seen. So their in-depth knowledge of the genre is not very in-depth, and we get really mediocre science fiction, action, adventure. And what I also find really interesting, and it's kind of, we've seen this in Discovery Season 5. So go with me on this one. You've jumped forward 1,000 years. Now, in those 1,000 years, anything could have happened. You could have had an extragalactic civilization show up, like the Andromedans in By Any Other Name, which is an episode from the second season of the original series. You could have done anything. You could have shown us a future. What would humanity be like in 1,000 years? How would humanity? None of that. Everybody talks like they lived in the 21st century. And the future they've shown us, Discovery's future, is painfully uncreative. But here's the thing. What they do is, what the creators of Star Trek do, go, oh, the fans, let's take something that's relatively unexplored and let's make it our own. Like, oh, I don't know, the Breen. The Breen were part of the Dominion War, part of Deep Space Nine, and not much was known about the Breen, which made it cool. But rather than come up with their own race of aliens that we've never met before, and the universe is a big place, the galaxy is a big place, 1,000 years, a lot of travel time happens. What do? Rather than give us something of their own, they once again, as modern Star Trek is wont to do, they co-opt something that they didn't create, and then they want to make it in their own image. And they do it badly. And it's bizarre to me. And modern Star Trek Strange New Worlds has completely turned the Gorn into these ridiculous xenomorphs that I don't even understand how they go from their young stage to being a formidable spacefaring race. It's like, oh yeah, we don't know much about the Gorn. We're going to make them cool. We don't know much about the Breen. We're going to make them cool. And oh, you know what? Whether it's the Mirror Universe or whether it's the Guardian of Forever, which they went back to Harlan Ellison's original script because somebody read that IDW comic, and they're like, we can make the Guardian of Forever like Doctor Who. We'll get Brass from CSI, which is insanely ridiculous. And when I was watching this, I'm like, who decided to do this? Like, these are just, I hate to say it, really dumb, uncreative decisions made by people that are not trying to tell great stories. They're just trying to be cool. Like, oh yeah, well, let's go back to Harlan's original idea. It's just, but here's the thing. They are lying. It's fraudulent creation. And when I watch it, I'm like, tell me you don't know anything about Star Trek and don't tell me you don't know anything about Star Trek. I mean, it's so frustrating to watch something that has been so well documented on so many different levels, and you're watching the people that are in charge of it now just doing things that feel patently, well, not just uncreative, but not correct. It's like it's I don't know what you'd call it, a malapropism, but on a grand scale. It's not just a word. You're not like Mrs. Malapropping something, but you're showing me something that it's wrong. You've got it wrong. Anyway, so the Bad Robot era of Star Trek movies, they made 3 movies, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond. For the last, 8 years, they've had numerous announcements of a Star Trek 4, a new movie. And we haven't got one yet. And so in Hollywood, when somebody gets brought on board to develop a project, that means they are being paid either as a director's coming on to work with a writer. Money is flowing. People are getting paid. The starts and stops on the Star Trek 4 project with people, creative teams being brought on and then let go, and they're not, means that much money has been spent. It's money against that project. So even though Star Trek 4 hasn't been made yet, the budget of it's gone up and up and up because they have to recoup their costs. People talk about how Star Trek the Motion Picture was one of the most expensive movies ever made, but that was because the Star Trek Planet of the Titans movie that Philip Kaufman was going to direct was dispensed with. They were building sets and they'd commissioned 13 scripts for the Star Trek Phase 2 TV series that they scrapped. All that money had to be accounted for. And when they made Star Trek the Motion Picture, the budget was so high for a number of reasons. They were locked into a release date and they fired Robert Abel and Associates halfway into production. So they lost a year of production for the visual effects, which made them, they had to hire Apogee and Future General or Douglas Trumbull's company, and the budget went up there, but they also had to account for all the money that was already spent on these aborted Trek projects. So Star Trek 4, the J.J. Abrams film, I mean, whether it was Noah Hawley being hired, I mean, it's because no one knows what to do with Star Trek. No one does. And certainly Bad Robot doesn't. They want to get out of the Star Trek business unless they were, going to make profit. But for everybody that talks about, here's something else to think about, because I have this conversation all the time. I want to be very clear. The J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies were incredibly expensive to make. Star Trek, the budget was reported at $175 million. That movie did not make $500 million worldwide. And just as a box office project, let's say you make a movie and we're going to, $175 million is your production budget. Let's say you spend, I'll be conservative, let's call it $25 million in marketing. Let's round up that number. So Star Trek 09 cost the studio $200 million in production and marketing costs. Let's just, for the sake of argument. Now remember, when you spend that kind of money, the studio only gets back half of the box office of the movie. So if the movie, say, grossed $500 million, the studio would only get back half of that. So you're looking at $250 million. Now remember, it's not just the production and the marketing of one movie. It's also Paramount's overhead. And they take money out of every film budget and all the money, and they're like, okay, our operating costs for the year, the entire lot, all the executives, are this much money. And they take some of that out of every film's what it makes, part of the budget, all that. That's part of it too. Then people forget about that as a factor. So making $500 million and including all the expenses in marketing, even though if they spent $200 million, if they get back $250 million with marketing costs and all that, they really haven't made much money at all. So that's the first Star Trek movie. And Star Trek Into Darkness was a lot more expensive, and they took it around the world, and they tried to build Star Trek up as a global brand. Well, that didn't work either. And they certainly didn't make their money back. And Star Trek Beyond didn't do well at all. So remember, for every box office dollar that a movie makes, the studio only sees half of that. So you have to look at the production costs, the marketing costs, and whatever the studio overhead is, and judge that. And people say, well, Rob, there's all the ancillary markets. There's home video. There's cable. That's true, too. But the fact is, the Star Trek franchise as a feature film franchise was never making money like, say, Transformers, which was up to $1 billion, or a lot of other franchises that make that kind of money. Why? Because Star Trek, because of what it is, even if you make it more, even if you jazz it up and make it more like Star Wars, it's still only going to appeal to a certain group of people. Star Trek is niche. If I was in charge of Paramount, I would have capped that movie and said, okay, you make a Star Trek movie for $80 million. Well then, that's a start. And is it easy to make a Star Trek movie for $80 million? No. But if you don't know how to make a Star Trek movie for $80 million, you have no business making a Star Trek movie at all. And so if you were to take Star Trek, if J.J. Abrams were, and of course everybody gets what they can, while they can, when they can. And I get it. Bad Robot took over the Star Trek franchise as a business. They failed. Creatively, they failed. They did not. They had a great cast, but their movies were silly and ridiculous and one-dimensional, and the characters, the villains were inane. As I've said, Eric Bana is probably the stupidest. He's a great actor, but his character is written to be the stupidest villain in the history of science fiction. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Here's a man who is mad that his homeworld was destroyed by a supernova. He goes back in time, and rather than go make a beeline with his future technology to his homeworld and say, hey, 100 years from now, the Hobus star is going to go nova and kill everybody. Why don't you start doing something about it? He doesn't do that. He's still mad, and he takes out his vengeance on Earth, on Vulcan, whatever, when he could have solved the very problem he was mad about in the first place, but he never stops to think about that because he's so fucking stupid. Anyway, that's just me. But so now we're at a place where Bad Robot, they're like, we got to get rid of these guys. I mean, they've been holding up this project. I mean, has anybody been more inept in trying to get a feature film off the ground than the people at Bad Robot? I don't know. In maybe the number of people that's been trying to remake Logan's Run for the last 25 years. How many people have come on board and left that project? More people than have left Star Trek 4. So what did they announce? From a corporate standpoint, let's see. Did they look for a filmmaker like a Ryan Coogler who was in love with the Rocky franchise and came up with the idea of Creed? That's what you need. You got a Ryan Coogler your fucking franchises. If you want to reinvigorate your franchise, you have to find talented filmmakers that love the IP, that know what they're doing. Ryan Coogler comes off of Fruitvale Station. Great indie film. He's working with Michael B. Jordan, a charismatic screen presence. Comes up with an idea, the way I've heard it. Him and his father were watching Rocky movies when their mother was sick. His father's wife and his mom was sick. And he came up with the idea of Creed. And he was able to convince Sylvester Stallone, and the rest is history. Cut to 3 Creed movies later. Now a 4th one's in the works. That's how you reinvigorate a franchise. It stays in universe, and it's made by somebody that loves the universe, that carries it forward. And you don't spend $200 million on it. That's how you handle an IP. Now, Star Trek is inherently more expensive than that because of the special effects and all that. I get it. But if you're a clever filmmaker that actually came out of the indie world, you'll figure out how to make a Star Trek movie for $80 million. So now that Bad Robot's out of the picture, what does Paramount do? What does Hollywood do? Well, Hollywood did about the most uncreative and safest thing they could possibly do, which is all Hollywood these days knows how to do. They hired Simon Kinberg. And for those of you who don't know who Simon Kinberg is, Simon Kinberg has been involved with just about every franchise you can imagine. X-Men, Star Wars. But he's not responsible for any of them. He comes on and works on these franchises, and his resume on paper, oh, well, we got to hire this guy. Just like the reason Bad Robot that J.J. Abrams got onto Star Wars. But, so, yeah. And let's take a look. Let's read this article about Simon Kinberg that was in the Hollywood Reporter. You guys have probably heard about it. Eaton Vlessing and Boris Kitt wrote this. Simon Kinberg in talks to produce Star Trek movie franchise for Paramount. Paramount is looking to the X-Men producer to boldly go and relaunch the property on the big screen. Relaunch it on the big screen. Good luck. Anyway, longtime X-Men producer Simon Kinberg is beaming up to a new franchise. The multi-hyphenate is in talks. By the way, Simon Kinberg worked on Deadpool 1 and 2, but he's not working on Deadpool and Wolverine. The multi-hyphenate is in talks to produce the new Star Trek feature for Paramount Pictures. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed, if all goes well, the door would open to him taking active creative roles on the rest of the storied franchise's film side. Alex Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman are the main creative producers on Star Trek's television side. The main creative producers. Well, I guess that's their title, but are they? Are they really creative producers? Are they? The project Kinberg would step into is already in very active development. Toby Haynes, who directed episodes of the Star Wars series Andor, is on board to direct the feature, with Seth Grahame-Smith writing the script. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, woohoo! The project is set to be set decades before the events of the 2009 movie that was directed by J.J. Abrams, likely around modern times. And it is said to involve the creation of the Starfleet and humankind's first contact with alien life. You guys do know that we've seen multiple iterations of this. Did you, in 1996, maybe people forgot there was a movie called First Contact that ended with humanity's first contact with the Vulcans. Maybe? I don't know, but okay. Abrams remains involved with the new project as a producer, of course, because he needs that money. There's no release date for the feature, but the studio has signaled that it would like a 2025 opening. The machinations of the franchise take place against the backdrop of a potential sale of Paramount, which could find itself under the ownership of Sony or Skydance. There hasn't been a Star Trek movie since Star Trek Beyond, which was released in 2016. In recent years, Trek primarily has lived on the small screen, boldly finding new life thanks to numerous streaming shows on Paramount+, among them Star Trek Discovery, Picard, and Strange New Worlds. Efforts to relaunch the film side, including reuniting the Abrams Trek cast that included Chris Pine, Zoe Saldana, and Simon Pegg, among others, have ended up stranded on rocky alien shores. Paramount is also understood to still be developing a fourth Trek to feature the cast that is being described as the final chapter for this crew. So let's get this straight. You're going to make another prequel movie that deals with the founding of the Federation, which Star Trek Enterprise did, and the first meeting of an alien life form, which Star Trek First Contact did with the Vulcans. I know that there's rumors, and there is a script dealing with the Romulan War, which, by the way, is the wrong script about the Romulan War that they should be doing. What I don't understand is why did they look to Simon Kinberg when they already have people working for them making movies? Oh, I don't know. Eric Jedrinson and Chris McQuarrie, who are doing the new Mission Impossible movie, who did Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, that outgrossed every Star Trek movie ever made. I know for a fact McQuarrie loves Star Trek, and I know for a fact Eric Jedrinson wrote Star Trek The Beginning, which is exactly the kind of thing that you want, because it's all about the outbreak of the Romulan War. And it also deals with the new crew of Star Trek cadets, or Starfleet cadets, who have just graduated from the academy. You already own that script. You've owned it since the aughts. And Eric Jedrinson was the supervising producer of Band of Brothers. And he's working with Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie already. Why are you hiring? Simon Kinberg is the most corporate, obvious, boring choice. He'll do an okay job, but he also directed X-Men Dark Phoenix. You know, he's somebody that has to work with other people. Why hire him? I don't know, because he's Mr. Franchise. He was probably at the top of the list of somebody who's like, well, who's somebody who's worked on a lot of different franchises that isn't J.J. Abrams? Oh, Simon Kinberg. He's worked in TV. I mean, I can't imagine, and I'm sure he's a very nice man. I've never met Simon Kinberg, and it's not to disparage him because, hey, I love things like X-Men Days of Future Past and Deadpool 1 and 2, which he worked on. but, wasn't the primary force, but he's had his fingers in the pies of many different franchises. So, let's hire him. Why? Where's your Ryan Coogler? Where's your indie film director coming off something like Fruitvale Station who truly loves Star Trek? Somebody who will come in and make it their life's ambition to give you great Star Trek. Not somebody who's going to take the job because they want to get paid. Where's the passionate filmmaker that you're going to hire to make a Star Trek movie, by the way, for $80 million? Bad Robot wouldn't be interested in that. They're going to want another $200 million budget or whatever they can get. I mean, Steve Asbell over at 20th Century Fox made Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the president of 20th Century Studios, Steve Asbell. They made Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes for $30 million less than War for the Planet of the Apes. That's how you do a franchise movie, my friends. But are we going to get that? Probably not. So Kinberg rose to prominence thanks to his writing and producing work on Fox's X-Men franchise, over whose course he took creative control and even made his directorial debut with Dark Phoenix. Yeah, but was that a good thing? Did Simon Kinberg, take the X-Men franchise into the right direction? Some people could say yes, some people would say no, but was he the primary focus of what made X-Men movies good or great? He has also worked on movies ranging from Murder on the Orient Express to The Martian, as well as select Star Wars projects, and he worked with Graham Smith before as co-screenwriter and executive producer on his adaptation of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Again, I ask you, why would you want this person, other than the fact that he gets things made and gets them done? Why Star Trek? Is he particularly passionate? No, he wants to work like everybody else in Hollywood. Are you going to get somebody who's going to make it their life's work to give you the best Star Trek movie possible? I would say, looking at Simon Kinberg's work, it's as much hit as it is miss, or vice versa. But that's what we're getting now? The most obvious and uncreative choice they probably could have come up with. And again, it's not to slight Simon Kinberg, but this kind of corporate thinking is not what your IP needs. You want to revitalize an IP, you got to find passionate creators who love the property and who also know how to make movies. Now, I'll tell you, Simon Kinberg's nice guy by all accounts, smart guy and all that, but is he the guy to do something new with Star Trek? And is he the guy who can make it for a price? You've got to reinvent Star Trek for the big screen, not just toe the corporate line of people. That's what all Star Trek is being made by people that don't know much about Star Trek and don't particularly like Star Trek, and they want to change it into something else. And they've damaged the brand irrevocably. Now, I know people are going to say, but Rob, like Mike McMahon loves Star Trek and he made Star Trek Lower Decks. That's fine. But Star Trek Lower Decks is a farcical show. And I think turning your IP into a farcical show is one of the most damaging things that you can do. Now, do people love Star Trek Lower Decks? Certainly. Is it good for Star Trek? I don't know. Genre fans love their comedy. I understand that. But anyway, so we've got Simon Kinberg is now taking over the new Star Trek movie. And I get it. A lot of things he worked on I love. I love The Martian. I love Ridley Scott's The Martian. I really do. I think The Martian is one of my favorite movies of the last 25 years, especially the extended version. Love it. And he was involved with that. So maybe if he Martianed up Star Trek, we'd get something pretty good. The Martian could be actually a great Star Trek story. But in terms of finding a new, vital, creative voice, is that the way to go? From a corporate standpoint, it's certainly the safe way to go. But is it good for the IP? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But this is my problem with a lot of these entertainment IPs. They're playing it safe. Get some new blood in, man. Reinvent Star Trek. That's what Star Trek was done. You had even Gene Roddenberry reinvented Star Trek. He went back to the drawing board and redid everything and gave us Next Generation. Admittedly, it took a while to spin up, but as many people say, they malign seasons 1 and 2. There's a couple of great episodes in season 1. 11001001, The Big Goodbye, Heart of Glory. There's a couple of great episodes. season 2 gave us Q Who, Elementary Dear Data in season 1, with Cyrus Redblock, or Coming of Age, not a bad Wesley show. Season 2 gave us like things like Elementary Dear Data, and they gave us Q Who, things like that. They gave us things like the Iconian Gateways. But still, we need people that are passionate. They have to know how to make movies. They have to love the IP, and they have to have a real vision for it. And I can't help but feel that the people that are being given the reins of these franchises don't have all those things. And it's frustrating to want to love something and then constantly be hit in the face with mediocrity. And these brands are being financially damaged. And I think that the people that own these brands don't understand why. Well, because they're not hiring the right people. And they're spending too much money. Because the people that they do hire don't know to do what the franchise owners want them to do. Because everyone takes the job. Everyone will take the money. Now, why not? Now, here's something interesting. Here's an article. This was in Inverse the other day. And I wanted to read this by Ryan Britt. Star Trek canon is suddenly going in several different directions. But you're only noticing that now? Star Trek has few equals when it comes to longevity. In 1966, the original series brought hardcore sci-fi concepts to network television. And in 1979, Star Trek the Motion Picture became the most successful feature film based on a TV show. In the 90s, with Star Wars movies on hiatus and Marvel mostly limited to comics, Trek maintained several TV shows, a feature film empire, and countless tie-in novels. We, Star Trek, were actually a harbinger of things to come. Just look at the universe entertainment we currently live in. LeVar Burton told Inverse in 2021, "Indeed, from the MCU to the Monsterverse, every genre franchise is trying to be a sprawling empire of TV and film. And while Star Trek is arguably the foundation for this reality, it still feels like an underdog, constantly struggling to stay relevant. As Discovery and Lower Decks end in 2024, the franchise is poised to revamp its canon and make yet another comeback. Here are all the latest Trek developments and what they mean for fans. A new Trek movie and a new timeline? The next Trek movie is thought to be an untitled Star Trek origin story, which will take place before the J.J. Abrams-directed 2009 reboot film. Directed by Toby Haynes, with a script from Seth Grahame-Smith, the movie and the entire Trek film franchise has gained a producer in Simon Kinberg, best known for helming the X-Men film franchise from 2006 to 2019. He really didn't helm the franchise, but he obviously contributed. Notably, the Star Trek films have been completely separate from the current TV show ever since Abrams' 2009 Trek. While there are perpetual rumors, I don't like it when people say that either, because remember, Alex Kurtzman wrote Star Trek 09, co-wrote it with Bob Orci, and also wrote Star Trek Into Darkness. So, he's had his fingers in that pie. While there are perpetual rumors about bringing TV and film back under the same umbrella, Alex Kurtzman remains in charge of TV Trek for now, so don't hold your breath for, say, a Strange New Worlds film. But buried in these behind-the-scenes developments is a rumor that the prequel storyline will be set, according to the Hollywood Reporter, likely around modern times. It's said to involve the creation of Starfleet and humankind's first contact with alien life. Now, first of all, can I just say that why? That's already been established in Star Trek lore. Why go back and do that again? Why? Are you going to be good enough to do something like that? Why would you bother to go back and once again retread ground where all you can do is make it less interesting than what we've already seen? Because you're going to try and reinvent it. And we're all going to be watching this movie could be the greatest movie ever. And we'll still look at it and go, that's not how it happened. So why is it that there's this impulse to constantly go backwards? Let's retell the story of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Let's go back and tell a story of Captain Pike and Spock on the Enterprise, and we'll make Spock like an autistic person rather than the Vulcan that he is. We'll give him he'll be fraternizing with his crewmates and banging all these chicks, and he'll be the hot. It's so weird. It's such a bizarre. Okay, the Discovery Spore Drive, you can go anywhere in the universe. I mean, I don't think they knew the difference between the galaxy and the universe. If you have the Discovery, why not just zip to the edge of the known universe and find out what's there? Do some scientific research about the most distant galaxies. It's so weird. When I watch Star Trek, I'm like, do you guys know? When you tell me that you can go anywhere in the universe instantaneously, when you say universe, why haven't you done that? Like, if I had a spore drive, the first thing that I would do, I'd be like, hey guys, let's go to the edge of the known universe and see what's there. You know the thing that the Webb telescope, that impossible thing that galaxy they said couldn't exist? Plot a course. Let's go, Stamets. No one's ever done anything interesting with the Discovery spore drive. And now they pretend they don't even have it. You know, it's like when those 5 lights, the Red Angel beacon lights show up, and they all showed up at the galaxy at the same time. Look, we can see all these lights come on at the same time. You're like, you guys do know how light works, right? You do know that how you wouldn't see all that at once, right? No, they don't. And when I'm watching this show, I'm like, this show is so monumentally stupid. When somebody tells me they have a spore drive that can go anywhere in the universe, and then they don't go actually anywhere in the universe, and they only stick around the Milky Way galaxy, I'm like, you guys are dumb. You writers are dumb. And I'll say it. You're dumb writers. Don't tell me that you have a spore drive that can go anywhere in the universe and then not go everywhere in the universe. Or anywhere in the universe. The difference between a universe and a galaxy is big. And I'm not convinced the people that write modern Star Trek know the difference. Because they certainly don't show it through the stories they tell. And hey, if they're not bringing the Breen back, they're going back to the 6th season. I mean, look, man, if Salome Jens, if Salome Jens, she's old now, but you got to bring her back, right? Wasn't that the first thing they should have thought of? If I was going to make a sequel to The Chase, I would have said, well, we got to go hire Salome Jens. They got to find her at the end of the quest, and tie in Deep Space Nine and the Changelings. And oh, no, I don't want them to do that. But I would have. If somebody asked me, Salome Jens, baby. She was in John Frankenheimer's Seconds. Check that shit out if you want, because that is some good shit. But when I watch this Star Trek stuff and I'm reading this, I'm like, who thinks this is a good idea? Whatever the Romulan War, ground pounding, fighting on Earth, who thinks that this is a good idea again? When they're going to tell us this story again that we already saw in a feature film. By the way, one of the great moments in Star Trek history is when the fucking Vulcan ship shows up at the end of First Contact, which they brilliantly riffed on in Enterprise Season 4 and A Mirror Darkly Parts 1 and 2. Or Part 1, actually. But, I mean, do you not remember that? So, hey, why would anybody who's a Star Trek fan, and if I might pontificate a little bit more, a Star Trek Starfleet Academy show is also going backwards, because now you're watching a bunch of people that haven't gone into space yet. By definition, they're in school. And we're going to get to that in a minute. First of all, let's see what all of you guys have to say about what's going on. Wow, there's a lot of people that have a lot to say. Wow. Okay. Stubble McShave was the first person to send in a tip and says, according to himself, M. Night Shyamalan self-financed The Visit, Split, Glass, and Old. Do you think that's a viable way for other directors who are in director prison, such as Tom Hooper after Cats? He probably has the money to make a $10 to $20 million movie. Well, Stubble, it's interesting. I think that's one way to go. But you know what M. Night Shyamalan did? He had Blumhouse. That was a smart move that he teamed up with Jason Blum, even though he's self-financed. The key is not necessarily getting the money to make a movie, although that's obviously a big thing. The key is once you've made it, how do you get your money back? That means you have to have a distributor that isn't a crook and that will actually make sure that they can. But the great thing about Blumhouse is they have movies that are good enough. They look at them and they have Universal to release them. So I do think, I mean, look, it is a rule of Hollywood, never spend your own money on your own projects. Unless you're Kevin Costner or Francis Ford Coppola and you're at Cannes this year. But you should never do that. You always want to spend other people's money. But if you're a filmmaker and you made a lot of money and you've got a lot of money sitting around, like if I won the lottery and made $1 billion, I would definitely set up a $500 million film fund and go make movies for the rest of my life and make my friends movies as well. I'd partner up with a company and get distribution and go put stuff out. But you need to know how you're going to get that money back, even if you're spending your own money. You want to have distribution. So that's what they had. So interesting. Shyamalan was very smart to partner up with Blumhouse on those films. Paul Star Guy says, today, the 24th, is my birthday, 64. And I went and saw Furiosa, which I liked. I hadn't seen any of the old Mad Max movies before and have watched them over the last few days. Each movie to me is better than the last, and I'll watch Fury Road on Saturday. Well, first, Paul Star Guy, happy birthday. Will you still leave me and will you still need me when I'm 64? I don't know. But congratulations. Happy birthday to you. And, it's funny. It's like you go back and you watch Mad Max 1, which I saw in a theater when I was 12 years old. And that was like this biker movie. It was a biker gang movie. It was kind of like there was another Australian movie that came out a little bit before that called Stone. And it kind of followed in that tradition. And then, of course, I think one of the great leaps of any IP, call it an IP, they didn't call it that back then, but the leap between Mad Max to Mad Max 2, or as we know it here in the States, a.k.a. The Road Warrior, that was the reason that they changed the movie's name to The Road Warriors, because nobody knew what Mad Max was. It wasn't a huge hit. They figured we can't call it Mad Max 2. It's so different anyway. Who cares? But it's really interesting to see that leap, and then you go to... And Road Warrior came out domestically in 82. It was made. It came out in 81 in other places. And then Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out in 85. And then 30 years later, Fury Road comes out, which is pretty dope. But I think the Mad Max franchise is a great franchise, and the evolution of it's really, really interesting. Al Renshaw says, I've loved all things Trek except Lower Decks. Well, I think that's a good thing. It's good to like things, and don't ever let anyone tell you that you shouldn't like something. I mean, I personally might not like a lot of modern Star Trek, but I'm not going to tell somebody who likes it that you shouldn't like it. Of course you should like it. If you like something, you like something. No one can tell you you don't like it. That's so silly. And no one should ever judge you that because you like certain things. It's good to like things. You should like things passionately. Colt says, Rob, since you like the Powerpuff Girls, you should get the DVDs of a cartoon called Invader Zim. Oh, I know all about Invader Zim. My ex-wife and I loved Invader Zim. I loved Invader Zim. It's about an alien and his robot dog that is sent to Earth as punishment, which he tries to defeat Dib and destroy the Earth. Hey, Siri, describe Invader Zim. No, Invader Zim was big in our house. We had autographed Invader Zim swag. And, yeah, I loved Invader Zim, although it did wear a little thin, to be honest. But the first time you see Invader Zim, it goes over quite well. But I loved Invader Zim. We had stuffed Invader Zim's plushies, and it was great. I love Invader Zim. Mad Chad says, Rob, I just got back from seeing Furiosa. What a film. I haven't seen it yet. I liked it even more than Fury Road. We'll see it again, and Hemsworth stole the show, a career performance from him. I'm going to go tomorrow. I've just been working so hard on this audio drama and casting, and it's, yeah. I'm glad people seem to really be loving Furiosa. Hunter Becknell says, hey, man, I just want to give you some love. Well, Hunter, I'm going to give you love right back. Sonny Dominguez says, house sitting for an NBC exec overlooking the War of the Worlds wreckage at Universal Studios. Weed, Guinness, and now your channel is in their YouTube algorithms. What would you put Universal in terms of their appeal and success compared to other studios? Oh, when I was a kid, I loved Universal. Universal obviously has a long history with Steven Spielberg. But I loved Universal. I mean, the airport movies. Earthquake. I mean, growing up in the 70s, Universal was my favorite studio because it was called Universal. Star Trek takes place in the universe. But Universal has a long, long storied history of great films. I think Universal was one of the great studios. I mean, come on, Jaws. Spielberg's run with Universal cannot be discounted. Great, 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 great stuff. And I'm a huge fan. I love Universal. And Universal's television, come on. They're 70s stories. They're great. Imagination connoisseur D's Webos celebrates 19 months of membership. Well, D's Webos, thank you. I appreciate that very much. By the way, there is not going to be a member call. Again, I forgot that this was the Memorial Day weekend. So I'm going to do like 3 weekends in a row of member calls. Yeah, so just wanted you guys to know that. So I apologize for not having a member call for the last couple weeks. I've been remiss. But I figured this is a weekend, Memorial Day weekend, so I figured you guys have better things to do and people weren't going to be around. Major Chai Chai says, I've been playing Does This Make a Good Star Trek Story again? What do you think of these for Star Trek? The Guns of Navarone, Lord Jim, and The Best Years of Our Lives. Bring those on. Very different stories. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Star Trek is Star Trek took other story ideas and transposed them into the Star Trek paradigm. You know, I mean, Balance of Terror, one of the great Star Trek episodes, is a submarine movie. It's Run Silent, Run Deep. You know, The Enemy Below, and they turn it into a Star Trek episode. I think that's a great game, Major Chai Tai. Playing Does This Make a Good Star Trek Story? The West Wing is a great Star Trek show. Group of people, you know, the bridge crew. Instead of a starship, they're the bridge crew of the entire country trying to do good. I know if you're Josh Olson, the writer, you don't think so, but I like that show for that reason. Master and Commander with Paul Bettany and Russell Crowe. That's a great Star Trek show too. Darth Plato says reinvent for a new generation is a pretext for polluting with current groupthink. Well, that's current groupthink is bad writing, and this is my problem with modern genre writers. They're all writing Buffy and Angel, and they're all making it about me. They don't know how to write about out there. They don't know how to boldly go, and it's monumentally frustrating to watch. But that's another problem with, like, I didn't expect to see myself in the entertainment I was watching growing up. As a matter of fact, I didn't like to see people my own age unless they were doing bad things, you know, like Clockwork Orange or Over the Edge or If, you know, I'll watch something like that. But yeah, modern groupthink, not so good. Not so good. What are you going to do? Major Chai Chai says, I saw an article that's a 2011 survey found Star Trek fans were more women than men. I'm wondering if the execs saw that and decided to princify Star Trek like Disney did to Star Wars. Well, I'll tell you something. I mean, Star Trek has always had a large contingent of female fans, and I think that one of the things that attracted female fans to Star Trek, certainly in the 60s, was they liked the strong male characters. They liked the camaraderie. Some girls liked the slash fiction of getting hot over thinking about Kirk and Spock together. But I think that's what was appealing, is that for a female audience, you're watching men do good. You know, now, of course, you can, if I were to talk about that kind of thing, people would be like, well, Rob, that's not very forward thinking of you. You're not very progressive. But, you know, let's face it, most people are still straight. And when you see depictions of great male characters, I think they're appealing to both men and women. Just the same way that great female characters appeal to men. I think it's silly. Like, who, you know, we talk about Ripley, but in terms of the sci-fi space, Sarah Connor, Ripley, La Femme Nikita is not a science fiction movie, but I love that character. We like strong, capable people. Doesn't matter what gender they are. I think audiences like if they feel authentic, you know? And the thing about people like Sarah Connor, Ripley, Buffy Summers, they're who they are. And their strength, I mean, I love the fact that both Ripley and Sarah Connor, their strength comes out of the fact that they're mothers. You know, their power in protecting their brood, protecting their family. And what's so great, that undercurrent in Aliens, you have two mothers up against one another at the end of that movie. You know, and that feminine power and feminine life-giving strength that men don't have, That's not a hindrance. And if you watch it in a movie like fucking Aliens, that's the reason she's able to kick ass, because her own child, Amy, died while she was in hypersleep. I was going to come back for her birthday, her 11th birthday. I mean, that's what's so cool about Ripley was already a great character in Alien. But when you get to Aliens, James Cameron knows what's up. He understands the power of femininity and leans into that, the life-giving force of the mother and her cub. It's fucking awesome. And we love that because it's genuine. You weren't taking a female character and just transposing male traits into her. You were leaning into the feminine and making that why she was such a badass. And only a mother could go into a fucking mother's lair with that flamethrower, and point it at those eggs and crook her head like this. And the alien queen knew what was up. It was two mothers, head to fucking head. There was no men allowed in that room. They couldn't get there. They would have been killed before they stepped in. That's why it was awesome. And fuck yeah, man. Bring that shit on. So I don't think... Here's the thing. Princifying... The funny thing about Star Trek is, I don't care if you princify or princessify Star Trek, but you got to make it credible. I don't believe anything that happens on Star Trek Discovery. None of it. I don't believe it. You have not made me believe in those characters. Michael Burnham does not act like she's the captain of a ship with a crew. It's the Michael Burnham show. I know people joke about it. I don't believe any of that. They have not written. There's been no character in Discovery history. I mean, I know people like our one of our Final Five Cylons or whatever, but because they're writing him like he's an actual Star Trek character. It's so funny. People, you know what people like in Star Trek? When somebody actually writes a Star Trek character. Oh, how refreshing. Like Terry Metalis did in Star Trek Picard Season 3. Oh, this is what Starfleet officers used to be like. Right, I remember this. But yeah, the modern Star Trek they don't understand the military. They don't even make any kind of credible, well, Rob, Starfleet's not the military. Right, that's why there's military ranks. Come on. The structure was there. I don't believe anybody in Star Trek Discovery as a character that actually exists in a future that will never happen. Look, Star Trek, as I've always said, is the fictional story. It's a history of a time that never existed. And that history makes it interesting. But that history is immutable. Just like if we were going to tell a credible World War II story, we wouldn't suddenly put jet fighters in it. At least not Tomcats, unless you're making the final countdown. But we wouldn't do that, because if you did, it would shatter all verisimilitude. But they don't know that. Jet Sangani says the Nexus theme is great. Are you talking about the Nexus theme in Star Trek Generations? Did you message Quinn Snyder? I'm not going to tell you. Quinn Snyder, by the way, is somebody I grew up with. I went to school with him from the time we were in kindergarten to the time we graduated from high school. Quinn Snyder's, of course, now a very storied NBA coach. He had a very storied basketball career while he was at university at Duke. And, as a matter of fact, Quinn Snyder, we watched Halloween together. My first piece of physical media. I watched it with Quinn Snyder. Royston S. Bailey said, how do we know the Kurtz Trek shows aren't successful? Well, where is their pop culture footprint? And I'll tell you how we know they're not successful. Because, I would say that we've seen that they've had some success. But, for instance, Star Trek Discovery, whether they're model kits, toys, or action figures, don't sell. And they certainly don't have the kind of... they made deals to make these shows. You have to understand, they're making this Star Trek to add to Star Trek as a whole. Because Paramount doesn't think of Star Trek as a separate entity. It's all one entity. So all the Star Trek that they're making, from a corporate standpoint, they don't know whether it's good or bad. As I've made, they know that it does okay numbers because it is a recognizable brand. but it's certainly not doing the kind of numbers that Game of Thrones is doing. I mean, we saw real viewership with Picard season 3, and you've seen now there's been Star Trek Discovery has been in the top 10 of streaming shows or whatever. But it's certainly you can tell because there's not much excitement around it. And people don't even talk to me about Star Trek shows. We don't talk about the storylines. Like, oh my God, did you watch Star Trek last night? It was incredible. Did you see that? I get more people talking to me about every other show other than Star Trek, and it's not just because they know what I'm going to say. Louis Terrassa said, hello, old friend, was hoping for a Midnight Metal. That's tomorrow night. Dave Parker and Spooky Dan will be joining us tomorrow night on Midnight Metal. And you know what our topic is? We're going to be talking about the best needle drops in cinema history. That's source cues, music that already exists that they use in movies. And that should be fun. That should be fun. Join us for that tomorrow night at 9 p.m. right here on this channel. Aurora Uplinks says, Star Trek 14, Window of the Founders, a battle of time agents has left Admiral Janeway stranded with her loyal Captain Harry Kim and crew on Saratoga. I don't know about that. No time agents, please. No timey-wimey stuff. RRTNZ says, I rewatched Star Trek 4 the other day after hearing Drinker and Mahler discuss it. I feel about today's Trek as Kirk felt about the Klingons. Let it die. Yeah, I mean, Star Trek used to be, even Star Trek 4, you go back and you watch that movie is so much fun because it's all about characters. And there is special effects in that movie, but they don't drive the plot. Yeah. Aurora Uplink says they're stranded in a window in time, preserved from the chaos of the time war, but it is over and the galaxy is in flames. Now they must escape. Janeway uses her experience and understanding to open a wormhole with their warp drive, creating wormhole bouncing off a black hole that remains. They find Earth shattered and every member of the Federation gone. Klingons gone. Their galaxy sector is in ruins. A strange race survives in a corner. Determined not just for humanity, but every member of the galaxy, they go into the past and hunt for clues and stop the time war before it begins. Other idea I had that old Kirk and young Kirk on the same ship, fighting to see who commands it. Crew loyal to both, but they have to enter a wormhole. Pursuing a sexy, angry Romulan who hates them is drawing them into a trap in another galaxy through the wormhole where the founders of their races. Here's the thing. While all of that sounds like it could be cool and interesting, the question you have to ask yourself, what is that story that you just described actually about? See, a Star Trek story at its core, even though it's a science fiction adventure allegorical tale, is in some way about us. Now, not us as people right here and now necessarily, but what does it mean to be human? You know, what is the human experience? And all of the great Star Trek episodes, for all of their plots and all of their universe and in-universe shenanigans, they really have to be, and Michael Piller proved this with Star Trek The Next Generation, when he came aboard as the head writer for season 3 of TNG, he fundamentally changed what Star Trek was in terms of how they were producing the show. And he said, look, all of our stories need to come, they can't come from the sky. They can't come from alien threats out there. They have to come from within our characters. We have to tell stories about us through our characters. And that's where great Star Trek stories begin. All that other timey-wimey shenanigan stuff, that comes out of plotting a science fiction show. But really, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, with all that plot happening, what does it mean? What does it mean to us as human beings? I mean, when you're having a big cosmic event, like you just described, it's not so much about the cosmic event in that it's more about how do we as human beings respond to such an event? How do we face mortality? What does it all mean to us? And I think that that's what great Star Trek stories are telling us. You know, one of the things that I think modern Star Trek does not understand the character of Spock at all. They don't get it. They've turned him into like an awkward, autistic high school kid. that's also somehow a sex symbol. The idea that Spock would fraternize with a crewmate is ridiculous. They started this with Uhura in Star Trek 09. It made no sense there. It doesn't make any sense that Nurse Chapel, the whole point of the relationship Spock had with Nurse Chapel is it was unrequited, because Spock was never going to fall in love with her. And if he was going to fall in love with her, he wouldn't tell her, because he would not fraternize with any member of his crew. Because it's illogical to develop an emotional bond, a romantic emotional bond with somebody that you're working closely with and are going to go on landing parties with. Wait until you're done, and if it works out, it works out. But I mean, what they've done to Spock, and this is, when I say this, it has nothing to do with Ethan Pecker's performance. He was well cast, and I like the way he plays Spock. The way he's written is fundamentally flawed. They do not understand anything about Vulcan culture. They don't understand what the Vulcan character was supposed to be. It's maddening to watch. I'm like, you guys do not know. You write Spock not like he's supposed to be written. How do I know how he's supposed to be written? Because Leonard Nimoy made that character indelible. And we already know how Spock acts, and they've never been able to write Spock correctly because they don't understand him. They don't understand the character. Spock is a person of two worlds that has to be the best human being and the best Vulcan that you have. But at the same time, it's not that he doesn't have emotions. He's in control of his emotions. People think that, oh, Spock doesn't get jokes. Are you kidding me? He totally understands what jokes are. And the point is, he employs humor when necessary. It just doesn't, he doesn't allow his emotions to run away with him. I mean, if you watch the original series, he gives it as good as he gets it. Watch the very end of Mirror, Mirror. You forget, gentlemen, I had an opportunity to observe your counterparts quite closely. The very flower of Homo sapiens. I mean, Spock is a funny fucking dude. But you have to understand how that all works. And they make Spock in Star Trek Strange New Worlds a fucking idiot. And I can't stand it. And here, have a harp. Like, oh yeah, somebody gave him a harp, and Mbenga decided to give him a harp. Learn how to play the lute, my friend. It'll calm your nerves. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so dumb. Come on, Spock probably played that thing from the time he was 2. He didn't need you to give it to him. God, so lame. Fucking hate those shows. I really do. I really do. Anyway, there's another. I haven't even gotten to the next thing I wanted to talk about. I've barely scratched the surface. But I would say Aurora updates, those are very interesting ideas that you're throwing out. But here's a Star Wars movie idea. 2 massive space navies beating the shit out of each other to determine which faction will rule that area of space. But here's the thing. Okay, that's plot, but what is the story about? What is the story that's being told? I'll tell you something. If you want to see the greatest science fiction media show about 2 warring space empires, you have to watch the Japanese animated series Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Not the new version, but the OVA series that began in 1988. Watch all 110 episodes. It's some of the finest televised science fiction ever. And when I say ever, this is not hyperbole. I guarantee you it is one of the most gratifying science fiction experiences I've ever seen on television. It's my favorite animated series ever by a wide margin. Now, yeah, I do love Space Battleship Yamato, and I can't wait to see Rebel 3199 bring that shit on, son. That has been an incredible reboot. Since 2012, Space Battleship Yamato 2199, 2202, and 2205, which I haven't seen yet, and now they've got Rebel 3199. I can't wait to see it. It's been incredible. Amazing stuff, but watch Legends of the Galactic Heroes. 1001 Johnny says, God bless you, sir. I beg your pardon. Darn it, Rob, how long until the next membership call? We're a singularity, not an audience. It's true. King's Portal says, Rob, have you ever seen the 2004 Prince performance of While My Guitar Gently Weeps? He was the best. I think he was responding to Petty Well. So what King's Portal is discussing is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony. and Tom Petty and George Harrison's son and Prince. They're playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And I think it's at 3 minutes and 22 seconds when Prince starts to play. And it is one of the most... Now, some people might think he was showboating, but I don't care, because Prince is my favorite rock and roll performer of all time. And I would say this. I mean, everyone always goes, what about Jimi Hendrix? And what about Eddie Van Halen? And what about... Prince Rogers Nelson, Prince to my friends, is the single greatest rock and roll guitarist in history. No one can touch him. And I will die on that hill. Come at me, bro. I mean, I saw Prince live about 30 times. And let me tell you, that guy, that's why I have an action figure of him over here. Over there. Actually, I have another action figure of him right over here. But I fucking love Prince. And that guy, watching him shred on the guitar, but watch that performance. And there's a direct... Okay, this is interesting. So there's a director's cut of that performance as well, because the one that everybody's seen, there was more footage that they didn't use because it was a live show and they were recording it live, but they had other cameras. And so I want to say the director of that show went back and did a new version of that where you see more footage of Prince play. So look for that director's cut, but it's amazing. Aurora Uplink says the Federation is divided between isolationists and expansionists who want to draw in members from the Delta Quadrant. A civil war starts to brew, spurred by secret Romulan plots working with a member of the Federation who are true isolationists and aligning more with Romulans to share goals. Starfleet dispatches diplomatic vessels back and forth to keep the peace and look for clues while the Delta Quadrant starts to rile up and war may start. It's all good for me. Norwegian Kryptonian says, hello, Rob. Have you ever considered interviewing Anna Swag on your channel? Think you two could have an interesting conversation about Star Trek. I don't know who that is, but I would like to know. Laserbeam Hawkins has been a member for 2 months. Let's see what else is on here if I've missed anyone. And Aurora Uplinks also became a member of the PGS. So thank you about that. But we got to talk. I like your ideas, but I want to know about the substance of them. What do they mean? Major Chai Chai, I got that. I already read that. Darth Plato, I think I got you there. By the way, Major Chai Chai did send in her 20th super chat tonight. So thank you for that, Major Chai Chai. I hope things are going well. Did you go to a new convention? Mad Chad, that was his 20th super chat that he sent in too. And Robert April has been a member for 22 months. My mark for best Trek episodes being classroom discussion worthy, says Royston S. Bailey. Would I show them to students? TNG had the largest number of such episodes. That's a really interesting metric. I love that. I love that idea. I think it's a great metric. Would you show them to students? That's a good idea. I like that a lot. I want to know who Anna Swag is. It Swag? TSWG. I have to look her up and find out who that is. I just feel guilty if I don't know my fellow YouTubers. I don't want to miss out. I have another article I want to read. So, wait a minute. Did I even finish I don't think I finished the article that I was reading. Let me get back to that article because we'll see what that article was. So anyway, let's go back to this article. So it was talking about the Star Trek Origin movie. So let's jump back into this article because I want to talk about it some more. Notably, the Star Trek films have been completely separate from the current TV shows ever since Abrams' 2009 Star Trek. While there are perpetual rumors about bringing the TV and film back under the same umbrella, Alex Kurtzman remains in charge of Trek TV for now. So don't hold your breath for, say, a Strange New Worlds film. But buried in those behind-the-scenes developments is a rumor that the prequel storyline will be set around modern times. As depicted in First Contact, humanity met the Vulcans in 2063. So if this rumor is true, a possible third Star Trek timeline could emerge, one that contradicts the events of the Abrams movies, the Kelvin timeline, and the ongoing TV shows, the Prime timeline. The TV shows, I mean, Strange New Worlds already fucked up the Star Trek timeline by moving the eugenics wars. I mean, it's no longer... So when people say that Star Trek Strange New Worlds is an actual real prequel to the Star Trek, the original series, it's not. It's in a different timeline. I mean, we can argue the semantics of canon, if you want to call it that, all you want. But, look, I never thought that Star Trek, when I was a little kid watching it, was our history. You know, I never thought it was our history exactly. It shared a lot of things with our history, but it wasn't the same thing. I knew even as a 5-year-old, it was an alternate universe. It wasn't supposed to be real. And it's really bizarre that they think that, well, you know, the only way that we can make Star Trek relevant is if the potential of having a Star Trek-like future is true. And it doesn't make any sense. Khan, Nooney, and Singh. I mean, the whole idea of the eugenics wars, yes, was... people don't talk about eugenics as much now, but eugenics was a concept that was born, well, it wasn't born, but the late 1800s and the 1900s, there was a lot of talk about eugenics, and it wasn't good. So that's what they were dealing with. And, you know, that it's maddening when I watch Strange New Worlds, and between what they've done with the Gorn and what they did with the Romulans and what they did with Khan, it's so stupid. I watch it and I go, why are you lying to me? You're lying to me with stupid shit you're writing. Don't write that stupid shit anymore. Stop lying to me. Why did you do that to the Guardian of Forever? Why did you do that to the Gorn? Why are you lying? You know, you are lying. You are taking Star Trek. You're supposed to be writing Star Trek, and you're fucking it up. You know that guy on YouTube or on the cook on Instagram? Don't fuck it up. This is a fucking meatball. Well, that's kind of what maybe I should be that guy. I should make those things. Look, you see what you did to the Guardian of Forever? Don't fuck it up. Here's how you fucked it up. Star Trek has changed its history many times before. And Strange New Worlds recently altered the Prime timeline to accommodate real 21st century developments that the Trek of 1966 couldn't anticipate. This could be a similar change, not a whole new timeline. Either way, the next Trek film appears poised to rewrite fictional history again. Simultaneously, a major casting announcement dropped for the next live-action Star Trek TV series, Starfleet Academy. Hey, look, I love Holly Hunter. I do. But Holly Hunter as the Commandant of a Starfleet Academy 1,000 years in the future? Again, how can you make a show set 1,000 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future, where you're going to have students going to Starfleet Academy? You know what you're going to do? You're going to write Buffy and fucking Angel. That's what you're going to do. And yet kids for 1,000... If you go back 1,000 years right now, go back 1,000 years, kids were very different than they are today. The world was a very different place. It would be unrecognizable to most people. Going 1,000 years in the future and having everybody hang out with Tilly and Holly Hunter at Starfleet Academy with their lives and their loves and all, I can't think of a less appealing Star Trek show that I'd want to watch right now. I mean, my God, why do I want to watch a Star Trek show about teenagers who have yet to go onto a starship? Why would I want to do that? And why would I want to do that with this current creative team? And why would I want to do that 1,000 years hence when you're not going to be writing human beings that are 1,000 years old or 1,000 years from now? You're not going to be dealing with the technology they would have to do. You're not going to be dealing with the fact that half the human beings would probably be machines. I mean, there's the future of modern Star Trek, the future they're depicting in Discovery is the single most unimaginative and uncreative future ever committed to celluloid. It is so lacking in any kind of actual creativity or extrapolation about what human life would be like 1,000 years from now. I hate it. And I'm not going to watch a show about a Starfleet Academy 1,000 years from now by the same creative team. I don't care who's in it. You haven't convinced me that you know anything. There's nothing creative about the future that they've given us in Star Trek Discovery. It is lame. Why would I want to watch a show about Starfleet Academy in there? It's just going to be you lying to me every episode and you doing things. You're going to make it like it's of today, even though it's 1,000 years ahead in the Star Trek universe. My God. Anyway, According to Variety, Holly Hunter will serve as the captain and chancellor of the academy, presiding over both the faculty and a new class of Starfleet cadets as they learn to navigate the galaxy in the 32nd century. Okay, no one has proven that they know anything about the 32nd century, much less students that are going to navigate it. That future that they've depicted in Star Trek Discovery, talk about fraudulent creation. There isn't one compelling idea about that future. I watch that future and I'm like, did you guys ever stop and think? Like, did you have one afternoon maybe where you sat in front of a whiteboard and thought, extrapolated, talked to futurists about what human society would look like 1,000 years from now? Well, Rob, there was the burn, so they didn't really progress 1,000 years. I mean, look at where technology is taking us. Look at where we're going to be. Just read any futurist's thoughts. Read Yuval Harari's book, Homo Deus. I mean, do any kind of research into what human civilization might look like even 100 years from now. And you're going to give me a Star Trek Starfleet Academy show set in fucking the 32nd century? What the fuck? I mean, seriously, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. The people that are writing Star Trek haven't even shown us that they can write a competent bridge crew, much less a fucking school that's 1,000 years. You're going to get whatever, Buffy, the Magicians, Harry Potter, whatever the fuck you're going to get. It's certainly not going to be a very compelling show about the future. You might as well just set a show today. I mean, it boggles my mind that somebody thinks this is a good idea. Well, we've hired Holly Hunter. Yeah, if it was The Crash, Holly Hunter, I might get excited. But, I mean, give me a break. Anyway, casting a heavyweight like Hunter feels similar to what Trek did in 2016 when it was revealed that Michelle Yeoh would initially lead Discovery. Once again, a big name is brought in to give new Star Trek series a fresh start. While Starfleet Academy is technically set within the Discovery timeframe, rumors suggest it will be young adult and even somewhat comedy-oriented, which means it has to win over a new demographic. Yeah. Why don't they just make their own show? Rumors suggest it will be young adult. So while Star Trek films are going back to the beginning, TV is heading into a risky future. After the ending and post-credit scenes of Picard Season 3, showrunner Terry Matalas made it clear he was ready to make a spin-off series tentatively titled Star Trek Legacy, which would explore the further adventures of Captain Seven, Raffi, and Jack Crusher on the newly christened Enterprise G. But with Paramount and CBS in financial limbo amid a rumored merger, Legacy has yet to be green-lit. Now it appears Legacy won't be happening anytime soon. Terry Matalas has signed with Marvel to run Vision, a Disney Plus series set after WandaVision. While Marvel fans should welcome Matalas' talents, it suggests the balance of nostalgia and forward thinking that Matalas perfected on Picard won't continue in future Trek shows. Still, the future is uncertain. The next Trek film has already undergone several permutations, leaving fans with no idea what the final product will be. Starfleet Academy could shake up the idea of what Trek can be. As Spock tells us, there are always possibilities, and whatever happens next to the Trek canon, there will be no shortage of adventures to watch. I'll tell you something. Here's the thing. You know, Terry Matalas going to do a Vision show, it's ironic because you have Kevin Feige, who's a huge Star Trek fan, who is presiding over, I know what you might think of Marvel, but they're going to have a big banger of a movie coming out in July, but Kevin Feige is the most successful film producer of all time. And what did he do? He loves Star Trek. He watched Picard Season 3. He loved it. And what did he do? He hired Terry Matalas to do a very interesting, I mean, what could be more Star Trek in the Marvel Cinematic Universe than the new Vision exploring who and what he is? I mean, an Avenger who's basically going to be rebooted as a Data-like character. It's phenomenal. But the people that run Star Trek, that actually run Star Trek, would rather do a show with somebody that isn't Terry Matalas. Now, your lack of vision, literally, their lack of vision over at Paramount over Star Trek, but this is bad. Do you know what? I don't know if this is true or not. They don't like what Terry Matalas did with Star Trek Picard Season 3. They don't like the accolades he received. They don't like the Saturn Awards he won. They didn't like especially the ratings the show got. But, and some people say, oh, Rob, Star Trek Picard Season 3 was just as much hot garbage as Picard Season 1 and 2 were. No, they weren't. Because Star Trek Picard Season 3 had some moments for me as a Star Trek fan. They took characters that we love and extrapolated upon them and built upon them. In fact, I'll tell you something. The scene where Picard and Ro Laren are in the holographic, on the holodeck in the bar, and they're talking to one another, a scene that was 30 years in the making. Preemptive Strike was the penultimate episode of Next Generation, which we celebrate this week with All Good Things, the end of the show 30 years ago. But Preemptive Strike was the second to last episode, and it had Ro betray Picard. The fact that they resolved that storyline was amazing. Michelle Forbes was incredible. So was Patrick Stewart. For that alone, Star Trek Picard Season 3 earns my love and affection. The first time I ever watched it, I stopped watching it, and I had to ask the person that was showing it to me, I'm like, how did you do this? How did they do this? And it was amazing. Episode 4, where Riker is explaining that the death of his son caused him his grief. He eventually had to run away from Deanna and join Picard in his damn fool crusade because he was in an incredibly dark place. And he was not suicidal, but ready to pack it up. And that episode, the birth, you could say that it harked back to Encountered Farpoint. And you're watching a birth and you're seeing a fundamental change in the character of Riker. The relationship that Geordie LaForge had with his daughters was incredible. This is all very Star Trekian, but it's also very human. Look, the only thing that I didn't like very much about Picard Season 3, only because I wanted more, was I wish they had done an episode about how did Vadic as a wronged changeling and how did the Borg Queen as a wronged Borg Queen, how did they team up to work together? I thought that was really intriguing. And if they had done, a confrontation and in the middle, the climax would have been interrupted, but it would have been a really interesting if they had 11 episodes to go back and do an episode where Vadic and the Borg Queen concocted these two bad bitches. They concocted this plan to take their revenge on the Federation. And that's a very Star Trek story as well, that people, when you have wronged people and they have festering animosities or hatreds, what that can lead to. And I thought that was really very interesting. They didn't lean heavily into that, but those were stories I didn't feel that I was being lied to. Star Trek Picard Season 1, I'm being lied to. None of that made any sense. The way they handled the Borg Cube, none of that in what universe? The way Picard was acting, they wrote him as Patrick Stewart, not as Jean-Luc Picard, and I understand he had control over that, but that was the problem with the show. It felt inauthentic. And in terms of Terry Matalas, I can't believe that the head of Marvel, Kevin Feige, taps Terry Matalas to go make a Vision show. And the people that actually control Star Trek they want to make a Starfleet Academy show set in the 32nd century. They've made their Section 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh, and then whatever else they're going to do. They want to do, I don't know, ground pounder Romulan war stories on Earth, or they're going to go give us more Gorn bullshit, or maybe maybe Paul Guilfoyle Brass will show up wandering around again. Hey, want to go time travel? All you have to do is ask me and I can send you wherever you want to go. It's the dumbest shit ever. I hate it. And it's not cool and it's not good. But Kevin Feige, who's a lot more successful, he's certainly made better movies than Alex Kurtzman has, and better TV too. And remember, he made 14 Marvel movies before the MCU started. He saw Terry Matalas' talent. He said, this guy knows how to work within an IP. This guy knows how to take legacy characters that have been around for a long time and breathe new life into them. This is somebody who knew how to work in a budget. And Terry Matalas gets tapped by Marvel, but not by Star Trek to take over. And you get Simon Kinberg. Really? Well, Terry made the right choice. Kevin Feige made the right choice. And it makes my interest in a Vision show accelerate straight to the top. It goes to 11. My excitement goes to 11. It's unfortunate, but I wish Star Trek was in better hands. I wish that really creative people that love the franchise took it over. But I mean that for all IP. To take this back around, forget Star Trek, but all of these entertainment IPs that have been around for a long time, all the people that control them should ask themselves, what is it about this thing that has made it last for over 50 years? And can we find people that can credibly honor what has come before and give us something new that everybody will be excited to see? That's what we need from our IPs. And more than anything, we need that now. Otherwise, these IPs are just going to completely be devalued to the point where they'll be destroyed forever. And who wants that? Major Chai Chai says, alas, I have not been to any new Comic-Cons, but I will be in San Diego in July. Ooh, well, then I'll see you there. Currently, been working on my next costume and building new Lego sets. Man, there's so many cool Lego sets. Norwegian Kryptonian says, Anna, that Star Wars girl. Oh, if you'd said that, I love her. I've streamed with her before. She's great. Matt Tween says, David Cronenberg's character wearing a business suit in the 32nd century annoys me to no end. Can you imagine us today having a therapist wearing something a cleric wore in 1000 AD? Matt Tween, you nailed it. I love David Cronenberg. But I'm like, I'm looking at him going, come on, all the people in the 32nd century, I don't believe. I don't believe anything in that future. Nothing. Aurora Uplink says, I enjoy spinning out stories. Let me write you a rough Star Trek story outline and please tear it apart and say what you like as well. I love trying. Well, here's the thing. I remember Star Trek at its core. Take away all the starships. Take away all the accoutrements, the phasers, the communicators. Write me a story about here's the thing. Write me if you're gonna tell me a story, a Star Trek story about two people in the Star Trek universe. Forget all the rest of the stuff. Two people. And tell me, like, I would go back and look at a Star Trek episode like the penultimate episode of Deep Space Nine, Duet, in the first season. Harris Yulin and Nana Visitor. Look at that. That's a great Star Trek story. Or look at The Visitor. Look at The Visitor from season 4. That's good stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I would like to see more of from the franchise and any IP. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk Star Trek, so I talked Star Trek, and here you go. Once again, I think maybe I'm just going to give it a rest. You know, I don't like modern Star Trek. It's not for me. I don't begrudge anybody that likes it. I don't think that modern Star Trek is very inspirational or aspirational. I understand people like it for the representation, but I don't find it to be anything that I gain value from, to be honest. And I want to. Certainly they try, but the stories are, I don't know, maybe one day I'll figure it out, but there's other things I want to do. I just want our IPs to be better in general. And on that note, I'm going to go. I will be back tomorrow with Midnight Metal. And of course, I will be back with Dieter Bastian on Sunday for Let's Get Physical Media. But for now, I'm going to bring episode number 969 to a close. And I want to thank everybody for supporting this channel via Super Chats and tips. I want to thank everybody that moderates for me, Tom Jr. Jackson. I want to thank you for your very kind letter. I want to thank Stubble McShay for sending me foreign money. You know, if anybody wants to see their money go in this cup, it's got to be some foreign currency that I've never seen before. I've been to Switzerland, so I've had Swiss currency. I should have known the difference, but this isn't bad. I mean, Greta Garbo on your money. Love it. Look at that. I guess I'm rich. But the foreign currency cup from the village, number 6. Look, what else is in here? Oh, nothing. It's just an empty bag. I wonder what was in this empty bag. Now there's money. Send me your foreign currencies. That's kind of fun. But on that note, everyone, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night.